Welcome back to another episode of One Miss Pod. I'm your host, Zack Long. Unfortunately, Kelly Warner hasn't joined me today, but it should still be a great episode because I'm joined today by Danielle Ryan. How are you doing, Danny?
Hey, I'm doing as well as anybody can be doing in this 2020 nightmarescape. How are you?
It really is hell on earth, isn't it?
Yeah. I sort of feel like George Romero should come back up just to direct the next year.
You know what? Though we lost him, and that he's probably been underneath, and he's like, okay, I've had enough time. I've got my script in order. Let's do it. And we're just seeing that now. Like, he's down there directing it already.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had Land of the Dead, and now we're gonna have Planet of the Dead.
I almost did a spit take. I almost did a spit take with that one. Planet of the Dead, so it's Romero doing like his version of Planet of the Vampires almost.
Yes.
He's like, this time I really wanted to throw it back and I wanted to get that Bava influence in it.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yes.
That would be really great. I like this world that we created a little bit more than the world that we are unfortunately share.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, right?
Speaking about enjoyable worlds, so this is a podcast about Japanese horror. So what is your relationship with the genre?
So I actually Japanese horror is kind of how I got into horror, both Japanese horror and indie horror. Yeah, I never really got into a lot of the mainstream. Like I'm still catching up on slashers and stuff. But when I was 13, I rented Takashi Miike's Audition. And that was it. Basically, I saw that. I was like, "This is the coolest, scariest thing I've ever seen." And I saw that, and then I saw Lucky McKee's May. Like, I saw those within about 2 weeks.
Oh, May. Okay, this is not the American indie film podcast, but we're taking a side route. We're on a detour now. May is one of the best movies ever. I had the VHS, and I literally ran it until it stopped playing.
Oh, it's so good.
It's not on Blu-ray yet. How is it not on Blu-ray?
I don't know. It's such an incredible, influential indie horror flick, and it's such a bummer that there's no high def version of it. And I want something with some features. Like yes. So May and Audition were kind of my introduction to horror at like 13, 14 years old, and that's what shaped my sort of my tastes. Which is why I just went deep into Japanese horror all throughout my teens, and I still have a very big appreciation for it.
That is a really good introduction, actually. I mean, obviously, May is amazing. Please, if you're hearing my voice, go out and watch May. Support that movie. But Audition is a film that came to me personally a little bit later than it did like Ju-on and The Ring.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, hey, this reminds me of your ex-girlfriend. And I watched it and I was like, this reminds me of my ex-girlfriend. This is the scariest movie.
It's so scary. I actually was introduced to it because there was this old thing they did on, I think, TNT or USA or something. It was like the 50 scariest movie moments. And they showed the scene.
I watched those on YouTube.
And they showed the scene with Asami and the bag. And I saw that and I was like, whatever movie that's in, I have to see that movie.
That image with the bag has been one that I feel like Miike actually has repurposed a few times throughout his career. Like, it just worked so well that he's built a lot of similar images.
Yeah, well, I mean, it to me, it always felt like a kind of an homage to like Mike Myers sitting up in the original Halloween, like that moment of, oh God, that's alive.
One of the things that proved interesting when we started this podcast, we looked at all three One Missed Call films, and he did the first one. Mm-hmm. And there's a real sense that Miike has a fucking masterful sense of the architecture of a room, and that bag scene really shows it well. Like the way the room almost seems like a womb sort of cushioning in the image. And it's demonstrated greatly in One Missed Call, and it's something that keeps coming up in every one of his films, that always blows my mind, in that he's known for, being the guy that really pushes it. And one of the films that we almost watched for this would have been Visitor Q, which, that really pushes the the morals of your story. But he doesn't often get the praise he deserves for his control of the camera through a space. It is incredible.
Oh, completely. Like in Visitor Q, like the anything in the greenhouse for me is just brilliant. And that whole house, like I know the layout of the house, and he really is good at showing us setting. And I think that's in all of his work, even his TV show that he did, MPD Psycho. I think there was some really neat camera stuff that you don't see in a lot of television.
I haven't had a chance to catch up with that one. I've been wanting to, because the manga that it was based on is really good.
It's so good.
It is. It was definitely a fucked up manga, so if it seems like that's the right filmmaker to attach to it.
Yeah, and he also was doing sort of a fun anti-censorship thing because he purposely censored some of the wrong things. So like he would just put a little tiny censor bar over certain violent things, but then he would fight the censors on things like nudity. So it's kind of a trip. It's a little low budget. It's a little funky to look at, but it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you've read the manga.
I'll definitely have to check that out. And speaking of manga, though, that's a good way to
There
segue
we go.
into what we're talking about today, which is Uzumaki, the film from 2000, which was an adaptation of Junji Ito's manga, the same name. Which, before we even get into plot, let's start there with the comics. Have you read the manga this is based on?
Yes, yes. I've read that one. I've read a couple of Ito's manga. I've read the first Tomy, and then some of the shorter stuff, like the one with the wall with the holes. It's for me.
Yeah. I know which one you mean, but the name is very long.
It's a very, very long name, but like there's an image that's just stuck into my brain forever of like those human shaped holes in the walls.
I'm a big fan of Ito's work. I've read Uzumaki, I've read all of Tomy, and probably 5 or 6 other volumes of his work. And I think that this film and the manga series itself demonstrates one of the biggest faults I have with him, which, oh, excuse me, which I would say, I say this as a fan. I really do like his work. However, he is horrible at ending his stories.
Oh yeah, big time. The ending is super super weak in this. It's honestly the story itself is a little weak. This is more of a mood piece, I feel like, than it is an actual narrative.
Yeah, it's an excuse for a series of vignettes relating to spirals. And the
Yeah.
fact that we deal with, like, oh, this one character's father and mother get involved in this, you think that in a normal narrative that would really kind of drive your character to be a really integral cog in the machine that is the plot. But instead, our character kind of wanders through, just taking in everything, because what the manga itself is a series of essentially vignettes, and that it is a very faithful adaptation, actually.
Oh,
But
extremely.
there was never ever any real narrative structure there, and so as you watch through it, it does kind of feel like it just ends. Or no, it doesn't even end. Sorry, it just stops, kind of.
Yeah, and there's not really much of a sense of like rising action or like it kind of just meanders all over the place. But when it does give you more shocking elements or when it really does deliver on a gag, I feel like it's a lot of fun. It's a mess of a movie, but it's a mess that I have a deep appreciation for because of just how weird it's willing to get.
I would completely echo that sentiment, but I would expand a little bit more too on the narrative part, which is because of the fact that it is a series of vignettes. What we kind of experience, and me and Kelly were on Triassic Park, that podcast, just early 2 days ago, talking about this with the film we watched on that. But the nature of the film sets it up so that essentially you go through your 1, 2, 3 act structure dozens of times. It's you have very small stories that are all building, but they're not building an overall 3 act structure for the film. And so that's kind of why I think it sort of erases all the rise in action, and like you had described, is because it basically, each new vignette resets the drama level back down to 0 to build its story. And this makes sense when you're reading like each new chapter of a manga, but as a film, it feels a little bit hollow.
Yeah, it feels kind of like a lesser episode of The Twilight Zone. It is really what it comes down to, kind of feeling like, is that like we have this great concept, we have these really cool visuals, but we're not sure exactly what we're trying to say with it.
This is, surprisingly enough, I feel like that's what happened with Tomy, the first Ito adaptation, as well.
Big time. Big time.
They got that one much better, in my opinion, with the second one, where they did the like made for TV 3-story anthology.
Mm-hmm.
In that one, it was like, okay, this is Tomy. But in the first one, it was like, we have an idea of all these images from Tomy. Let's throw them at cinema.
Yeah, like, let's just take this cool stuff and put it in 3D on a screen and see if it works. And not really.
Now, what Uzumaki has going for it is, to build on what you were saying earlier, is those striking images. Like, there's people twisted up into spiral. Well, you know what? We haven't even said the plot. There is very little plot, but essentially a town is being attacked by spirals.
Yeah, it's that kind of like it's sort of existential color out of space Lovecraftian horror, almost, in that it's just so bizarre and beyond comprehension. Like, it's spirals. You are actually being beset upon by a visual shape concept.
And I gotta say, he takes, and I'm putting this at the foot of Ito and not the filmmakers themselves, as it is just an adaptation. But he takes the image of the spiral, and he does put it through quite a few interesting stories. Like, we have the father who, is that a washing machine that he puts himself up twisted into?
Yeah, that's the most striking image in the whole movie to me, and that's the one that like cemented the movie as something I would always sort of have a place in my heart for, because he's so obsessed with the spiral. He crawls into the washing machine and then it like twists him up, and they show it, they reveal that. And it's such a great reveal shot, because we get to see the reactions of the kid, finding it first.
That's a big thing in Japanese horror, is seeing, we're first given these characters that, to some degree, this film lesser than others, but we're supposed to identify with these characters, and so we always see them reacting first before we see the fear, where in a lot of American films you see the thing happens, so that's supposed to be startling. In that, I feel there's more of a connection with the characters in this style that we see more often from Japan. But when we see the body twisted up, it is now, the body is a spiral itself now.
Yeah, it's actually a complete spiral. Like, we joke it's the Cinnabon of Death movie, because it's because everything looks like a Cinnabon by the end. It's everything's gonna end up in that spiral shape, whether it's a girl's floating pigtails or your guts or the sky, or it's everywhere.
The floating pigtails was the image that I remembered the most. But the moment that stood out the most to me is, it's I want to say that it's the character's mother in the hospital, I believe.
The millipede.
Yeah, like, just upset, like when she obsesses with her ear, and they're like, hide the fact that it's like a spiral from her.
Yeah, that there's a spiral inside you, that this thing that you're so afraid of is already inside you. And then she snaps and tries to tries to stab her ear out, and it's nasty.
Yeah, like in the way that you just described it though, as like how it's already inside you, like there is a sense of violation within that concept that it really captures well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's this possessed sort of idea, this that it's in you, and no matter what you do, you can't get it out. So yeah, there's that violation of both your body and your mind, kind of like, again, it's that cosmic horror.
I'm a big fan of cosmic horror, and I think that when this movie is hitting it right, it goes up to 11. My favorite moment that I can't even call a moment. It's I guess an image, but it's not striking in like a visual sense, in that you just have a shot of, I forget which characters are, but they're walking across, there's just walking across the road and dust is blowing, and in the dust a spiral forms, and you could tell that it was CGI. But it was such simple CGI that it's very subtle, and I had to go back and rewatch it. And so they're literally hiding spirals within the film from you, and really just trying to fuck with your mind, and that's great.
Yeah, I feel like Japanese horror tries to mess with the viewer's mind a lot more in terms of making us doubt what we're seeing. And like, well, like you said, with the seeing the reaction before we see the gore, I feel like that's like Ari Aster, that's totally where he gets that from, is Japanese cinema and the way that's revealed. Because it's true, we usually do see the reactions of the characters. It's much more humanized. And I feel like all Asian horror honestly tends to be more emotionally driven than a lot of the Western counterparts, because it is more about how these things can cause lasting damage, instead of just, oh yeah, it's a slasher and he stabbed her and then she fell down dead because she had sex with somebody. I feel like there's a little more to it.
There definitely can be, because there is a strong component in Japanese horror about the past sort of reaching through. And now we still see, I mean, every slasher movie, if you look at the slasher's history, there is some event that happened in its past that then is now coming back. It's the basic, Robin Wood talked about the return of the repressed. But in the Japanese, on that, there is definitely a sense of the way that it's not just that the past has come back in some physical form. It's not Michael Myers is coming back. It's that the past continues to breed through familial lands and breed through relationships, and then kind of spread out in almost an infectious manner. And I feel like that is something that it does so well as compared to the West.
Yeah, I think when you look at how Japanese horror, especially from this era, like from, I would say, the late '90s, early 2000s, I think there's just a glut of these really great Japanese horror flicks that examine emotional horror and existential horror, and they do it in a way that we hadn't really done in the West as much. I mean, I think about Pulse and how brutal that movie is, and how much it's inspired filmmakers that are, big indie horror filmmakers today, because it's about how we're haunted by our pasts, how we're haunted by one another, and how the biggest boogeyman of all is trauma.
I Pulse is a really good example for another thing that I think that the Japanese do really well, and that is, if you look at Pulse, you say, okay, well, where do these ghosts come from? You look at the movie, you can say, oh, well, there was the internet and there was this, except that what we talked about in our episode on Pulse is that we find out like this story of the explanation of everything is actually coming from a character who's just taken his own guess, because a lot of what happens in Japanese cinema is a lot of the answers and scenes that would fill out the story are kind of pulled out of the narrative because the characters would not have been exposed to them. So in American film, when that now it's a lot better than it used to be, but in the past, we can think of 1,000 generals or doctors giving a long-winded explanation, like the end of Psycho explaining, well, here's what happened. But in the Japanese, instead of sort of having this almost but through their over explanation in the American one, it creates almost a sort of sterile clinical version of a narrative, where in the Japanese, by holding out things, in that it kind of helps that the narrative itself to embody character more and thus have a more emotional tinge, because it's not just about sort of putting the pieces together in a logical thinking way. It's about how everything feels and culminates in the emotional realm.
Exactly. It's not about solving the puzzle as much as it is about enjoying the ride and like getting through the mystery. And because of that, you don't tend to have big exposition dumps and things like that, like you do in American cinema. I think a lot of American cinema in particular is so focused on making money. It's so commercialized that they worry that people, oh, well, what if they don't understand and we've lost them? Well, we better explain it. Well, we better explain it. And so everything is made basically for the lowest common denominator so that everybody can get it. And I feel like, well, that's well, that's it's fine. I think that that can hinder movies from really being able to tell the story the way that it should be, and to really be able to get under people's skin, because life doesn't have all the answers. Life is ambiguous. Life is a big, open, scary thing, and we never just get exposition dumps. Like, oh my goodness, if somebody could just like beam down from heaven and be like, oh yes, this is why all of this happened, that would be amazing. But it's not how it works. So it feels a little more authentic in Eastern and in indie cinema, because it's not doing that for us. It's not explaining it like we're children.
Yeah, like exactly what you just described is one of the reasons that I don't watch much mainstream film in general. If you see me on Twitter, there, I've never talked about Marvel or Star Wars or any of the hottest new releases, just because I'm like, it's not for me. It's not my style. It's not what I want. I don't give a shit what anybody else likes in this world. They can like what they want, but I just, as a whole, I've stepped away from it because over and over again, I'm kind of let down by what I see coming through the Cineplex and whatnot.
Right.
But almost, I can't say that I like every Japanese film I've seen, but the ratio is so much kinder for the Japanese films that I have seen, because they do things in an interesting way. Now, there are some that push certain issues too far. This one in particular, wish was a little stronger, but I still enjoyed it. And but there's so many of the mainstream cinema ones I can think of where I'm just like, why is this scene here? Oh, it's a producer's note. Okay, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they don't take risks. I mean, that's my biggest thing is I love movies that take risks. And even if they completely fall on their face, even if the movie fails in everything that it's setting out to do, if it's trying something new and unusual and challenging, then I support that a million times over something that's been, product tested, something that's, oh, we sat 30 people down in a room and had them tell us what they think about it, and now we're going to change the movie. No, I don't want that. I want to see what the artist, what the creator wanted to put out there. And I feel like something like Uzumaki does that really well because, yeah, it totally falls on its face sometimes. There are a couple of moments in the film that are supposed to be scary that are actually just downright funny. But it tries. It's trying, and that attempt, I think, is what's important, and I think is it's really worth bringing up because I wish more movies would try different weird things. Like, get weird with it. Come on, guys.
I agree with everything, so now let's talk about the snail.
Yep.
That is in the manga, a student turning into a snail. it looks kind of silly, but you're like, okay. But in
Yeah.
the movie, a student turning into a snail looks even sillier.
It looks so silly, and then they riffed on that in Tokyo Gore Police. There's a character that's part snail, and
Is that the guy that gets his head, like half his head off?
Yeah, and he's got like
Okay,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, there's snail people in that, and it's super super weird and gross. But I like that visually worked better, and so every time I see the snail in this, I'm like, oh, it's the bargain bin snail. Like, oh, it's bad. It is a really really bad visual gag.
It never really goes anywhere.
No.
But that's the same with every single. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about the manga a little bit more, because in the first volume, we see a lot of the first volume in this movie. We see a lot of the second volume in this movie, I believe. I kind of don't remember the second as much. I remember thinking it was great, but the third volume, it becomes the one where this smoke that's in the sky, which is a element we haven't talked much about, but every time somebody dies in a spiral way, they go up and join the spiral in the sky. That leads to like horrific winds that destroy the town, which then lead to like our main character learning how to jump really powerfully, kind of like a Superman. Before they were like, fuck it, he does just fly. And like it becomes like a battle with like wind powers, like it was Avatar or something.
Yeah, and they never go fully there in the movie, which
I think is probably the smartest choice they made.
Yeah.
I don't think they could have pulled it off, and I don't think tonally that it works.
No, it really doesn't, because I feel like the ending of the movie works better than the ending of the manga, because at least in the movie there's sort of a foreboding sense in the ending because of the it's like the big shot of the spiral in the sky and this understanding that, okay, it's taken over this town, now it's going to take over the world.
Yeah, it's apocalyptic.
Extremely apocalyptic. And I feel like that ending kind of works better than the manga. It's it's not perfect, again, but I think that it's just a really interesting take. It's a shape. I mean, it's one of those horror movies where you're like, oh, what's the boogeyman? And it's like, oh, it's a tire. Oh, it's a shape. Oh, it's that. It's so strange that it's kind of amazing just that it exists at all.
Okay. You know what? I have a question for you, my friend. You are tasked with making the sequel to Uzumaki. However, spirals are out. Spirals are so 2001. What shape do you pick?
Triangles. I love triangles.
I was thinking triangle as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like square and circle left. There wasn't that many, but
well, I mean, rhombus, quadrilateral, equilateral, quadrilateral.
Listen. If you try to come in here with a rhombus, you're going to get a producer's note. Nobody knows what a rhombus is, and that one lady thought you cook it into a cobbler.
Wow, that's a rutabaga.
Oh, see, I was thinking of rhubarb. Oh no, wait, is that rhubarb? Rubik? Oh my god,
rhubarb, rutabaga. They're different.
Oh, okay. I didn't learn anything. Good.
Yeah, this
isn't. I was scared.
like,
I almost learned something today.
This isn't like when I learned that eggplants are aubergines, and I was really mad that we call them eggplants.
I did learn something, I guess.
There you go. Yeah. Yep. The British call eggplants aubergines, and I think that is a much better word.
Yeah, there's not a lot. See, like, I work in a barn with chickens, and I've yet to see them like any eggplants. So, like, if you could plant an egg and get an eggplant, like, it would have happened already.
That's true, and it wouldn't be purple. Yeah, triangle. I would go with triangle if I had to do a evil shape movie. I think there's some really cool triangle imagery in like Only God Forgives and Neon Demon, and
yes, Only God Forgives is one of my favorite movies of all time.
In Mandy, there's some cool triangles. I think triangles are that's the cool new shape. That's my prediction.
But we got to make it scary though, and that. So we got door stoppers. Okay, door stoppers are terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, what else is a triangle? Oh, the top of a milk carton. A milk carton could be used for something. Make breakfast scary.
Oh, there's triangles everywhere. They're just usually parts of bigger things. But I'm sure we could definitely find ways to make that scary. Witches'
There
hats.
is there is definitely something about the spiral itself. Like there is something a little bit disorienting about looking into the middle of a spiral. So I can see where he got that idea.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and if one moves, it actually does, like, it can make you dizzy. Like if you watch one that's doing the swirly thing, it can definitely mess with your sense of balance, and it is very disorienting. And the fact that they do exist in nature. Other shapes don't really exist in nature as much. Like really hard shapes. You don't really find triangles in nature. You don't find squares in nature. You don't. I mean, circles, yes, but a spiral is a weirdly natural and sort of, there's sort of a I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know. It's something it's real. It's very real, and it's kind of gross. I mean, because I think of like spirals, and I think of like your guts all spiraled in, like your small intestine all wrapped in on itself.
Huh. I think, see, for me, it provokes or invokes, like I kind of think almost like the infinity symbol. Like I know that's not a spiral itself, but it has that sort of never-ending feeling. Like you kind of lose where it ends and where it begins.
Right, like the
And,
Ouroboros kind of.
yeah, yeah. I once tried to get into a film school where we had to do a 60-second short, and the idea it had to be based on the idea of water. And mine was the Ouroboros eating its own tail based on the way that the rains filled up a thing.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I mean,
Uh,
well, there's like another spiral for you: water going down a drain. Like it's
yeah,
so pervasive; it's everywhere.
it's also interesting when you take a step back and you think on almost a more conceptual one, in that the cycle of water coming down and evaporating and going back just creates its own sort of spiral because some is lost in the process. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very natural thing. I guess that's kind of the word I was going for originally. Was natural. It's spiral is sort of the shape of nature, because everything in nature tends to be more curved and more, chaotic, and so that's something we see a lot there. It's kind of like that bad uh, uh, Jim Carrey movie, The Number 23, where afterwards I just kept seeing
oh
23s
yes,
everywhere.
yeah,
After I watch
yeah, that happened to me too.
every time I watch Spiral, I'm just like, oh, there's one. Oh, there's one. Oh, wait, there's one.
It is actually very interesting. Yeah, like I'm looking around my house and I'm looking at my plants and I see the stem of this is circular and the leaves are slightly triangular, but they have a very sort of a very roundness, like a kind of like a Santa's gut hanging over his belt almost to it
Mm-hmm.
version of a triangle. But then I look at everything else and I look at the architecture and there's such hard just such hard lines. Rigid is the word I was looking for. Lines, and it's just you can tell what's man-made versus what's organic, and the spiral is definitely a much more organic than man-made. But it's interesting that we also do create our own spirals as well, because you look at like wool on a stick or whatever the hell you call it. I'm not a good crafter, but we definitely do create our own, but nowhere's near that amount. And I think that is an interesting divide that I don't feel like this movie explores. I don't think it really matters. I think they just are like, no, it's mysterious. End point.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they never really dig into like, well, why spirals or like, it's a very surface level movie. Again, the experiences we get with some of the characters are more than surface level because it's good at delivering those emotional moments, but it doesn't have anything to say. Like, they never really dig into, well, why the Uzumaki? Well, why does this happen? Well, why does this character succumb to it more quickly than this character? Like, it none of it matters. It's just there to get these visuals across and to try and do these scares that don't really work. And so because of that, it feels like lesser of a movie than it could have been. It feels like wasted potential, and that's kind of a bummer.
Did you see that there was news about Uzumaki recently?
Yes, that we're getting an animated show on Adult Swim.
That could be very good.
That could be the best thing ever. Because
that is exciting news.
That is great news, because I feel like a lot of Ito's stuff is so visually different that it's almost impossible to translate to live action. And so doing it as animation is something I'm really, really excited to see.
Now, he had a anime series recently, which was not very good from the pieces of it I watched. However, I'm very interested to see what happens when you take Ito's ideas out and you hand them to people at like Adult Swim. Like, there are some great minds working at Adult Swim.
Oh yeah,
like some absolute geniuses, and even some of the weirdest geniuses, like those infomercials that they were doing.
Oh yeah, like Too Many Cooks.
Yeah, and there's like the medication one, or in the short video about a bear.
Yes. Oh my goodness, short video about a bear is amazing.
And so you have a company that is willing to release things like that, and now they have their hands on Uzumaki, and so that is very exciting. But before we see that, before we finish talking about the 2000 film, what are some of your favorite images from this? You mentioned the one of him twisted in the washing machine was the most striking, but are there others that you like?
The millipede crawling into her ear is forever embedded into my brain.
Icky.
It's so icky. It's so icky. That for sure. Those are the two really big ones. I do think the police officer staring down the barrel of his gun and seeing the spiral in the barrel right before shooting himself in the face.
That is a great moment.
And then the hole in his head is like a spiral. Like, that's a really interesting moment, and it's a cool gag. That's one of the gore gags that actually kind of works.
Yeah. What is okay, so what was the point of the girl with the hair? I remember it was all based around her hair, and it was like she was just like the bad bitch on campus, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was kind of the bully, the mean girl on campus, and she embraced the spiral and sort of was like, no, this is a cool thing. And so she had the hair, but like, it also kind of, because it is sinister, it sort of started to make her even worse. Like, as I think what it was like, I think it was just a way for them to indicate that the spiral was evil because it chose this evil girl to sort of, push it forward in the school.
So really, so her hair becomes like spirals up in the air, but that's all that it really did to her. Then it's just like it helped her to have better hair and be better at being mean to people.
Yeah, she yeah, I think she does get choked by her hair eventually. If I remember correctly, towards the end, they find her and she's been strangled by her hair. Like, I do remember it comes back to get her in the end.
Okay, that's one of the things is they throw a whole bunch at you, and then like with some of the stories, instead of getting what you need, like, oh, here's the story, you get like a clip here, a clip there.
Yeah, and she also walks into a power line, I think, because her hair's up so high. Like, there's so many little weird moments, and none of them are explained very well, other than like the dad in the washing machine. I think that's why that sticks so hard, is because it's set up so well. Like, we've gotten to know this character, the son, and we've gotten to know the dad a little bit, and how he's like really trying to get video of the spirals. So he's got his little camcorder and he's running around trying to get video. which is a very Japanese dad in a movie thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's why he gets into the the washer, is because he's trying to get video of the spiral from the inside. And so the fact that we actually get all of that set up, and then we get the son having to live with it, and then the wife, the mother has the ear thing. I feel like everything with that family is really well done, and it is actually explained and we care. But I feel like everything else is just sort of extra for visuals. This could have been an hour long and it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, it would have been a lot better if it was a bit shorter. They did not try. God, I wish I remembered it more. I watched it, but then we rescheduled, and so ADHD has kicked my ass. But did they ever try to recreate the famous image where the girl's head is a spiral and her eye gets lost in it?
No, they do not, thankfully, because I feel like
that would have been cheesy.
It would have been cheesy. They kind of reference it with some things. Like there's definitely that the sort of like, I remember like a ball going down into it, but they never do the eye thing because they couldn't. There's just no way. That is such an iconic image. No. And I mean, especially in 2000 with a tiny budget. No way.
Yeah. That has to be in the Adult Swim version.
Oh goodness, yes.
There's no way it isn't.
That is gonna look so cool. Like that, I'm looking for. I just want to hear it like rolling around like a marble. Like I'm looking forward to the sound effects.
Oh, that's gonna be interesting. Now, did you by chance happen to look up who this was directed by?
So this was directed by. I'm going to mispronounce this, I bet. Higuchinsky?
I have it as, I had Higuchinsky.
Higuchinsky. Okay, well then there we go. I told you I was going to mispronounce it.
I looked it up just before this and that to find he only had the 3 credits, and one of them is Long Dream from the same year, which I actually, when I was preparing for this episode, I was like, shit, I should watch Long Dream. Because you could find that, I'm pretty sure it was just either on YouTube or Dailymotion, but it was a hour-long TV movie that was an adaptation of a different Ito one. So he's actually adapted 2 Ito stories.
2 Ito stories, and then it looks like a different manga. So it's all been manga that he's adapted.
And that's just like, and then he just... That's really like all there is, apparently.
Yeah, and then in 2003, he just disappeared.
Yeah, because you see only 4 titles, because he has one credit with the camera in the electrical department on "Hello, welcome to Bubble Town's Happy Zoo." Yes. And then everything else is either Ito or that other one, and he's got director credits, write-in, cinematographer, editor. So apparently on this Ito TV movie, Long Dream, he just fucking wore every hat. And then just disappears after a couple years in a very Ito fashion, I would say.
Yeah. It says he's from Ukraine too. Like, I'm fascinated. I want to discover who this director is. I want more information on them because that's wild.
Well, if he is, there's a guy that I found on Instagram called Andrei Higuchinsky, who says that he's a movie director, but I have no way to tell he's the same person. But if you go to his website...
I'm looking at all the food he's posted pictures of right now, and it looks delicious.
On his website, he has Japanese music videos there.
Yeah, and on his Instagram, most of the food is Japanese.
Oh, wow, this might be him, because under his works are just a whole bunch of music videos.
That's interesting.
That would explain why he disappeared, in that, you know what? I could see the guy that did Uzumaki would be great at rocking music videos, like small stories, entirely image-based.
Yes. Yeah, he did a whole bunch of, like, J-rock music videos. I'm looking at this now. This is amazing. I am delighted by this. I'm going to just get lost looking at music videos this afternoon. Bless.
Yeah, this was a surprise and find, because all I had from him was that name, and now we just discovered the lost soul.
Now I'm gonna go down the J-Rock music video rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole or spiral?
Same thing.
So speaking of spirals, though, do you have any other thoughts on this one?
I think it's something super duper worth checking out. I know that it is hard to get a hold of. I know that it's not really available streaming anywhere, like legally. So that's kind of a whole thing. My husband bought me a DVD of it as a present for my birthday. So that's the only reason I have it. But it's worth checking out. I think it's something that it's not perfect, like we've definitely been talking about its flaws, but I think that it was so ambitious and it's so different from anything else out there that it's worth checking out. I mean, I honestly feel like it's worth checking out for the washing machine, like that reveal alone.
It's definitely, I would agree that it is definitely worth checking out. There's some cool images. There's some cool way that they manipulate the image in order to hide information from the viewer. You can find it on Daily Motion in 5 parts. You're welcome. And it's definitely one that check it out, but probably expect it to be completely overshadowed when Adult Swim does their new one.
Oh, absolutely. But even then, I still feel like, people who are really into horror cinema and independent horror cinema should still check it out. Because I think it's been weirdly influential, especially upon Japanese horror, because I think there's a lot of stuff that I've seen in Spiral that has popped up in other stuff later, which could be Ito's influence, but some of it feels like it's straight from the movie. I mean, like that snail in Tokyo Gore Police is direct.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that you should definitely check out the first and second volume of the manga. You don't need to finish it with the third. I feel like it weakens it overall, and that it's the type of story it doesn't offer closure, and so why go seek it if it doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. But those first two are both just stunning visually, so check it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Danny, where can people find you online?
You can always find me on Twitter at DaniRat. That's DaniRat. And that's pretty much it for now, but I'm going to be doing a bunch of new stuff in 2021, and I'll be linking it all there. So that'll be the place to find me.
Oh, awesome. We'll definitely have to get you back on again in the future.
Heck yes. I'll come on, talk Visitor Q. We can talk about how that's the hardest necrophilia has ever made me laugh.
And you know what? I just want to. I need to set the. I need to have this documented. We are 48 minutes into this episode, and I was not the one to first bring up necrophilia.
See,
this is a record.
You knew you had me on for a reason.
It's always me with either necrophilia or incest, because I tend to use very incestuous as a sort of metaphoric speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm writing a book on necrophilia, so
I am the grandchild of morticians, so necrophilia jokes are like my inheritance.
That is wonderful. Well, okay, that was I think that was. I mean, we could spiral out, but how much more could you say about this movie? Check it out, and check out Danny on Twitter, and
yup.
Have a good one, folks.